Every programming language you've ever used, Python, Java, C++, follows a set of rules called a formal grammar. Linguists say this idea was invented in 1959 by a computer scientist named John Backus. They're wrong. It was invented 2,500 years ago in India by a grammarian named Pāṇini. Around the 4th century BCE, a scholar sat down and did something no one had ever done before. He took an entire spoken language, Sanskrit, and compressed it into 30,159 rules. Not essays, not explanations, rules, precise, formal, symbolic rules. The result was a text called the Ashtadhyayi, and it reads less like a book and more like code. Here's where it gets remarkable. When John Backus designed the notation to describe programming languages in 1959, what we now call Backus nar form, he was essentially doing what Pāṇini had already done. Define the base units. Write rules for how they combine. Let the rules generate every valid sentence in the language. That's how Python knows your code is valid. That's how a compiler reads your program. And that's exactly how Pāṇini's grammar works. When Western linguists finally studied the Ashtadhyayi closely, they were stunned. Pāṇini had used a meta-language, symbols to describe language itself, centuries before the concept even had a name. Noam Chomsky, the father of modern linguistics, built his entire theory of formal grammars on ideas that Pāṇini had already encoded. One scholar called the Ashtadhyayi the greatest intellectual monument in the history of mankind. Pāṇini wasn't born in a great empire or a famous city. He came from Shalatula, Pāṇini Bhoomi, a quiet corner of ancient Gandhara, near the banks of the Indus River. Today, that land sits across the border. But the mind that emerged from it rewired how humans think about language, logic, and structure. There is no statue, no famous ruins, no tourist trail. Just a name, Pāṇini, echoing through every line of code ever written. Next time you run a Python script and it works, somewhere in that chain of logic is a 2,500-year-old grammar from the banks of the Indus. India didn't just give the world zero. It gave the world the architecture of language itself. If this made you see something differently, share it with one person who codes more ancient science. Every week, subscribe.